you concealed information, right? You didn't talk about your wants, needs, desires. You were focused on them. And you extracted as much information as possible. And by doing that, you allowed me to really understand how much value these guys are going to be creating by doing the deal, which allowed me to push really, really, really hard when they were revising their bids. Somebody comes back with a $50 million bid. I was like, hey, listen, you're creating a lot of value here. It's going to take you at least 60 to get to the next round. That 50 is just not going to cut it. But you helped me do that because you played your cards right and you did the right thing in the management meeting. We've remained very credible throughout this process. We remain credible, and we've done that because we haven't had to really negotiate yet, right? We have let the process negotiate for us. I haven't had to have any direct negotiations with any of those acquirers. You've done a great job dealing with the management meeting. You've been cool and detached. You haven't gotten upset. You saw some low offers. You didn't get frustrated. You're like, this is how it works. So I'm going to trust the process and let this happen. So right now, because we're not doing any direct negotiation, all of that negotiation has been on the other side of the table. Those are those acquirers competing. And when negotiation takes place on the other side of the table amongst themselves, we are running an auction. But now as we start to get towards the meeting of the minds, it's when we sign a letter of intent. That's when leverage can abruptly shift from our side of the table to the buy side, right? The second that we sign a letter of intent, we're not binding ourselves to doing a deal with an acquirer. If the LOI is appropriately structured, really what it does is it binds us into confidentiality, right? We can't talk about the deal. It binds us into a period of exclusivity. And exclusivity means that the acquirer will have sole and exclusive access to data, finances, resources of the company to do their final assessment while they're drafting a purchase agreement prior to the closing. And as part of that exclusive agreement, that means we have a no-shop provision. That means we cannot talk to other acquirers, right? We can't say anything to them. And a lot of times, a buyer will want, like if another acquirer comes to us in an exclusivity period, that we actually have to notify them like, hey, a buyer showed up at our door and wants to talk. So we lose a lot of leverage when we get into exclusivity because we lose one of the most important aspects of leverage, which is competition. Because once we sign that LOI, those other buyers are gone. We tell them, hey, we just got into exclusivity with an acquirer. Thanks for playing. You didn't make the deal. Now, the ability to enter into exclusivity is powerful for us because they know we're going to enter into exclusivity with somebody and we want that to be them. So we want them to really put their best foot forward and pay a lot of money for this business so they can win exclusivity. But at some point, one party is going to get it. So given the fact that leverage will shift dramatically once we get into exclusivity, we have to make sure that we've really thought about all the things that are important to us in this deal and we get them in the letter of intent. So throughout this whole process of dealing with iterative bids, going to management meetings, answering questions, we've been having conversations over the last few weeks and really looking at all the other letters of intent. And every time we've gone through a bid process or an iterative bid round, we're making comments on the letter of intent saying, hey, acquirer A, the lease term should be 5 years and not 3. And hey, acquirer B, we're not willing to sell this. This is an excluded asset. So we're revising these LOIs as we go through this process. But now when the rubber meets the road, we need to make sure that we're really thinking ahead to the asset purchase agreement or the stock purchase agreement. And that definitive agreement is actually the binding document that we would sign sometime prior to the closing or at the closing. And then money will change hands. And then once money changes hands, the deal is bound. You don't own the business anymore. So it's important for somebody like me, as well as your legal counsel, to make sure you start to understand what sort of provisions will be in a definitive purchase agreement as we're going through this negotiation process to get to the letter of intent. There's things like reps and warranties, indemnifications, caps and baskets. There's a variety of legal aspects that will actually make a difference in your life post-closing that we need to make sure that we ask for at the LOI stage. And I'll do some subsequent sessions on some of those key points so you could be better prepared for that. But for our purposes right now, since I'm focusing on negotiation and these dynamics, it's really important to make sure that we ask for and get everything that we possibly can prior to signing the LOI, because at that point we lose leverage. In this particular case, let's say that the 5 bidders actually stayed in and we ended up signing an LOI with one of them, right? It would be not common that all 5 would stay in to the very end, but I want to make this super easy. So 5 stayed in. So we're telling 4, thanks. We've decided to move forward with another party. Thank you for participating. We'll see you on the next one. Those 4 go on their way. And now we have to make sure that this acquirer closes this transaction.